This morning I came across a book that I've had for years, and it's this one, A Ladybird Guide to Cub Scouts. I don't know whether you know about the Scouting movement or whether it still exists and has a pack or a weekly group that meets in your community or your city. But for me and millions of people, the Scouting movement has been something that has really allowed me to have a roadmap for life. And for me, I consider myself incredibly fortunate to have grown up in the Scouting movement. Both of my parents had been in the Scouting movement after the Second World War, and it was part of society, it was part of culture as it then was. I've always loved Ladybird books and I collected them as a kid, but to have this one on my shelf here at home and to have gone through it again this morning has been a really great reminder of the guiding principles of the Scouting movement and how we can apply those to life and give ourselves a map or a route by which to make sense of a life that can be complicated, frustrating, at times overwhelming. And so I wanted to share some ideas that I've jotted down this afternoon, having read that book earlier today. Having just spent time flicking through the pages and reading the detail within that little Cub Scout guide by Ladybird, it's blindingly obvious that so much of my character and approach to life has come from those principles I learned as an 8 or a 9 or a 10-year-old boy attending weekly meetings in my Cub Scout meeting hall in the village in Nottinghamshire where I grew up. Here are some of the things that I've noted down. Routine, community, learning, self-reliance, and service. All of those come out of the Cub Scout lore and the Cub Scout promise. I love this book for the illustrations within it. This is an illustration supposedly showing Robert Baden-Powell as a schoolboy who wasn't the most academic of characters, escaping from his schoolmasters, there's the schoolmaster, and hiding in the copse in his school grounds. My scout group was comprised of about 25 to 30 lads, and we would meet every week, once a week, and we had a group leader called Bagheera and Arkela. These figures came from the Jungle Books by Rudyard Kipling, but essentially allowed the group every week to be split into little groups of 6 or packs of 6, and each group had a leader called a sixer who was a boy maybe 6 months or a year older than the rest of us in the group, and we would have games and craft and exercise and storytelling activities, and I loved it. We paid 5 pence a week for the group activities, and this money went into the kitty or into the fund for our scout group. I've always been attracted to self-help books and books about character and perseverance and the willingness to succeed and to overcome obstacles. And I realised that looking at the Ladybird book, but also this one, Life's Snags and How to Meet Them by Lord Baden-Powell, and I realised that so much of my positive mental attitude and my enjoyment of books and texts like that come from things like this. This is my original copy. It was printed in 1930 and came down to me from my grandfather. But it's the basics of character and discipline and that whole thing which the Scout movement has as a motto of be prepared. Be prepared for what? Be prepared for whatever might happen. And that always means having an intention to go ahead with one thing, but there always being a plan B. There always being an alternative, a way to do something else, a different way to get to the objective. Here's a page which talks about the Scout law. The Scout had 2 things. One was the Scout law and one was the Scout promise. And basically these act for a young Scout or a guide within the guiding movement as their commitment to a code of conduct. And here it says, a Cub Scout always does his best, thinks of others before himself, and does a good deed every day. And how simple can it be? To always do your best, to think of others before yourself, and to seek to do a good deed or a good turn every day. However you look at them, those are great guiding principles for a young child, a young adult, a mature adult, and they come back to this whole idea of a value system, a sense of community, and a sense of service to other people. We all experience life in every range of the twists and turns and the ups and downs that it delivers to us. That motto of being prepared, that sense of doing a good deed, that sense of thinking of other people before ourselves. Think about that first thing of always doing your best. Life will throw all sorts of difficulties and challenges at you, but if you rise to meet those challenges with your best attitude, best effort, best intention, you'll have a better result than somebody who gives up or walks away or throws in the towel by any manner possible. The idea of thinking of others before yourself, that is an inherent value of community and looking after and being part of your community, and is incredibly useful whether you live in a rural, a city, or a massive metropolis environment. There will always be people who need your help and benefit from your support and your looking out for them. And there is enormous benefit for everybody in that one, for you and I, as well as for the person we are seeking to help. And the third item, in fact, that reminds me of the Cub Scout salute, which is the three fingers and then the thumb and the little finger crossed. And the third item, to do a good turn every day. I remember that the week after Easter, when I was a little boy, there would always be called Bob a Job Week, and a bob was a shilling or 5 pence in those days. And as individual scouts, we would find people who would give us little tasks to do. It might have been brushing the leaves off an old lady's driveway. It might have been washing the neighbour's car. It could have been helping out at the jumble sale or the bric-a-brac event for that particular week in the village hall. But those were all activities which involved service. We got 5 pence for the task, we got a shilling for the task, and that shilling or 5 pence went back to our group funds, and it would pay for a barbecue or an archery event or a woodland camp once a year. I remember very clearly you had a little pad of yellow adhesive notes that you would lick the back of them, and when you'd done a job at a particular house, the householder would put that in their window so that another scout would know that somebody had already been and done a job for that household. So you could walk along the pavement and look in the windows of all the houses, and in every few houses you would see a yellow sticker and know that a scout from your scout group or your Cub Scout troop had been to that house and done the task. For all of us as Cub Scouts, the idea of going to a weekly pack meeting, to seeing our friends outside of school and outside of playing and mucking around as kids on a Saturday or a Sunday, actually attending on the pack night and putting our uniforms on as 8 or 9-year-old youngsters, that was a great sense of belonging to something and giving us a sense of discipline and involvement and engagement with simple rules and ideas that have served us for life. This illustration is great. It shows a scout learning to use a public phone box. What's a public phone box? They've long since disappeared. This was part of our Silver Arrow program. There were bronze, silver and gold arrows, and each one had 12 aspects to it in which you would do something for the community. You might learn some skills like how to put a bandage on somebody with a damaged arm, how to make a phone call, how to put together a scrapbook of things that you were interested in, how to build a collection of seashells or stamps and talk to your scout group about it for 5 minutes. That's not public speaking, but it was having the confidence to talk to a group of friends in an ever so slightly structured way and have the confidence of talking to a group. So being part of a weekly meeting, going to annual events like scout camps where you'd stay overnight and have a cookout and play games and get involved in sitting around a campfire and listening to stories from the camp leaders. All of these activities have been great for self-reliance and character development, and picking these books off the shelf again today and just going through them and getting the benefit of revisiting what are essentially life lessons has been hugely enjoyable. It's incredible to think I was a Cub Scout 50 years ago. And where has the time gone? It goes like that. But today I've been reminded again about those lessons of the value of routine, the importance of community, the need for personal learning and development, the essential value of self-reliance, and as important as any of those, the value of service. Turning the pages of any Ladybird book is a step back into childhood and into nostalgia, To go back again today, after decades since I was a Cub Scout, has been massively enjoyable, but also it's shown me how values and characteristics are underpinned by the life lessons we have as youngsters, giving us a really clear route map or a guide for our adult lives.